This is a great one-wheeled experience for people that are ready to spend a whole lot of money for something that other means of transportation both can and cannot do. This 126-volt veteran Patton is the gateway to the performance EUC riding territory. So is it worth the €3,300 price tag? Let me tell you more about it. And don't worry, I won't drag this out Mythbuster style, and I'll give you the answer about the value of this product right away. In most cases, if you live in a city, this electric wheel is far too expensive and has only very specific benefits which would justify the price. If you consider the price to battery capacity ratio, you pay a staggering €1.50 per watt hour of battery pack on the veteran Patton. In comparison, the Pagode Master is substantially cheaper at 90 cents per watt hour. Less expensive EUCs, public transportation, e-bikes or motorcycles can present a more cost-effective, reliable, and less legally questionable option for the city. Not to mention that you can easily transport more cargo on a bicycle. So is the veteran Patton worth the money from a utilitarian standpoint just to get from point A to B in a well-designed city? Unless you have some health conditions that an EUC would help you with, then no, it is not worth €3,300. However, you could consider getting a veteran Patton for the following reasons: the motorcycle-like performance, the incredible, surreal feeling of putting your thoughts and movements into the ride of an insanely capable machine without handlebars. You might be tempted by the small form factor, which doesn't take up much space and can be easily moved around indoors and through doors. The range is more than enough, tested at around 90 kilometers. The ride is comfortable, smooth, and it effortlessly eats up bumps. The Patton can do things of an e-bike, a dirt bike, and motorcycle combined, and that in a small package. But is this vehicle good in the long run though? So even though Veteran did send me this wheel for free to keep, you can be sure that I will give you an honest opinion on this product. I've been riding this vehicle for 2,000 kilometers, I disassembled it and had a battery communication cable repair done to it. If you decide to buy a Patton in the end, feel free to check out my website below, which has a list of partners I recommend. My exclusive partner for Europe is my eWheel with a 5% discount code called wrongway. I don't get kickbacks from sales, however, I'm sponsored by this EU exclusive partnership. Let's start with the usual questions though. Both if you're new to EUCs or if you've already been riding for a while, probably you're interested in those three questions. Number 1, how fast does it go? The veteran Patton can reach speeds of over 60 kilometers an hour on a full charge without any issues. I would recommend to limit your top speed up to 45 kilometers an hour, which the wheel can sustain easily for more than 90% of the battery charge level. Number 2, what's the range? I did a GPS verified range test of 91.8 kilometers with the 2220 watt-hour battery pack. The range will depend on your riding style, weight, outside conditions and incline changes, so it can vary a lot. In my test, I was riding between 20 and 40 kilometers an hour in Polish spring weather on concrete paths, and my rider weight with gear is about 80 kilograms. The range is decent, and I'm confident that with my riding style, I'm safe to get at least 70 to 80 kilometers per charge, which is more than enough for daily tasks. Number 3, how does it charge? The veteran Patton is one of the fastest charging EUCs on the market. With the stock 5A external charger plugged into a wall outlet, you'll be able to reach 0 to 100% in 3.5 hours. Plug two 5A chargers for a combined 10A output into both GX16-6 ports, and charging time will be halved to an hour and 45 minutes. That is not the limit though. With a third-party charger like this Honingning fast charger, it'll reach 0 to 100% in less than 1 hour and 10 minutes using a 15A current. It's a pretty noisy charger though. Alright, so even with just this initial information, you know that this wheel is not just a one-wheeled toy. It's a legit performance powerhouse condensed into a cut-in-half micro motorcycle. And the good news doesn't end there. The high-voltage Samsung 50E battery pack along with a 3000 watt motor makes the veteran Patton not only effortlessly quick, but also one of the torquiest wheels ever to ride on. 0 to 50 kilometers an hour in 4.4 seconds? Check. 45-degree incline. Yes, that's 100% great, by the way. Check. Braking from 40 kilometers an hour in 2.4 seconds. Check. But let's face it, except for braking, those things don't matter all that much if you just want to get from point A to B in usual scenarios. However, if you live in a very hilly area or you like to go off-roading, then you will experience new levels of terrain tackling using just your body and a gyroscope-controlled wheel. Look no further. The veteran Patton has got you covered in terms of performance. There have to be some downsides though, right? Sadly, as this is a very new technology and a new means of transportation, unfortunately there are. Signing up for this means that you will be a precursor in the industry. Starting with the suspension. It's not something you can take apart easily. Motorcycle or bicycle repair shops might not accept those shocks for maintenance and troubleshooting. The fast-A suspension needs maintenance and did cause leaking in some units. Even though I consider the suspension technology to be the best one on the market, I'd still need to keep in mind that it needs to be serviced either by myself, using online tutorials, ordering parts and additional equipment, or I'd need to leave it at a professional EUC repair shop, like my e-wheel. Looking from the bottom, there's still movement of the wheel suspension assembly within the EUC's shell, which possibly could lead to damage or noises coming from the EUC. The little play that I have is not noticeable during riding and will hopefully not cause any further issues. The wheel could also start having a dead spot when rocking back and forth. Tighten the 8 screws located on the side if you have too much play of the wheel suspension assembly in regards to the shell. One downside of the system is that the shell material is soft and the horizontally placed screws hold the suspension wheel assembly in all directions. The big stress on the bolts and shell coming from all directions might deter the shell itself by repeated tightening and general stress of riding. Hopefully you won't have the rocking dead spot problem on your wheel, but I've seen some looser veteran Patton wheels. Bigger play might also cause the wheel to vibrate.
Just as a brief info, this is a aftermarket screw I got because the first batch or the demo batch which I had two long screws, so they wouldn't properly hold the wheel by the head and the thread. They're holding the wheel by this sort of length up and down and front and back, but to the sides they're holding it by the head. So the head is what presses into the aluminium body itself.
Bigode, although lacking in other departments of the suspension assembly, doesn't have this particular issue. My veteran Patton was alright, at least that was my initial thought when recording this review. I almost forgot, because I have this wheel so long, that with the first shock I did have some issues. And even after tightening all of the bolts and fitting a brand new motor mount, with the first suspension I had, it still had a dead spot. With the newer suspension I got, which was the 66 pound, the issue is much smaller, still a little bit of rocking back and forth, but nothing to write home about.
Still a little bit.
It started to make slight clunky noises after some time, which I didn't yet have the willingness to fix. There is no strict information on how often the maintenance of shocks should occur or how to fix those issues, except for the usual maintenance and tightening of bolts. I'd say that once a year is a good ballpark to check and do maintenance of all parts, and once every 5 to 10 rides, check the 8 screws on the side. If you really need a no maintenance wheel, you get a wheel without suspension. It's not easy to make a tire change either. The wheel needs to be disassembled using hex tools and you need tire spoons for the tire change. While it's not the most difficult tire change on the market, a thing to keep in mind is that there's different screw lengths, so you need to remember which ones go where if you are doing a full EUC disassembly. The aluminium shell is softer than the stainless steel bolts, so it's easy to damage the threads inside the shell body. I'm waiting for the day where manufacturers will think about an easy tire change in advance. Only Begode has one now. The upside of the tire change process is that at least you don't need to fiddle with cables or electronics. The motherboard compartment is sealed from water, which is great, but it has been done with silicone. So every time you need to access the motherboard compartment, you need to painstakingly remove the silicone and later reapply it. Not user-friendly. Apart from that, this wheel is a great progress from prior veteran wheels. The bumpers are strong and protect the wheel from falls. They also provide further structural rigidity. The aluminium body, shape and construction of the wheel is solid, leaving the rider with a very satisfying riding experience and a durable machine which will resist many falls without taking damage. So was there anything missing from a complete experience out of the box? Well, yes, I didn't get any power pads. This does save on parts as riders tend to get their own pads like my NyloNove Kinetic, but the wheel is just not ready to be ridden in its full potential without power pads out of the box. You need to invest at least €50 to start riding on it. It's not like getting a phone without a case. It's like getting a phone without speakers. There isn't much room to put the pads onto the shell of the wheel either. The mounting elements of the stock bumpers were in the way. The pad positioning therefore isn't optimal and my movement felt limited. It's not a deal breaker though. If you want to have better adjustability, the NyloNove bumpers fix this issue by being mounted to the front of the wheel without overlaps to the side. The adjustable jump pad is a great idea, especially if you wear different high shoes. I did remove them as they were slightly in the way for leaning on this wheel and I preferred the aftermarket pads. If you want to ride without the jump pad, you'll also have to remove the front bumper. The stock foot plates are usable but slippery when wet. Their shape also makes dirt stay inside and the studs are blunt, not interchangeable. Those don't even come close to the more robust, grippier, MTB studded NyloNove foot plates on the wheel. The all-important grip to the EUC is not to be underestimated. The light in the front is bright, but needs slight modifications to lessen the floodlight-like beam effect in order not to blind oncoming traffic. If you have the funds for it, I'd recommend one of the aftermarket Cyclope lights, which have a motorcycle street legal-like beam, high beams and daytime running lights depending on the model. The taillight is good but very blinky, not the brightest when riding except for braking. Mr. Meyer's taillight is much brighter, however, it's always on with the same strength, no brake light. I also changed the tire to a street tire. The stock tire doesn't grip that well in city environments, especially when wet. It's great for off-road though. It's beginner friendly, however it's not that stable or maneuverable at lower speeds. During strong wind gusts, it might be really difficult to get back on track with that off-road tire. Personally, I'd like to see a less aggressive thread pattern on the stock tire for this wheel. The aftermarket Heidenau K38 12x3 inch, which I've mounted on the EUC, works like a charm, giving me more control in turns at both high and low speeds. It's way quieter and the compound is far superior. For some, it might be too agile, more difficult to ride on, and have too much train tracking though. Naturally, for playing in mud it's worse, but then again, that's not something I like anyways. Lastly, the NyloNove upgrade kit with a seat brings in a lot to the table, both with pros and cons. The bumpers are soft so they won't shatter and they'll cushion the impact. The lower front bumper can be mounted without the jump pad block. The charge port access is easier. The top of the wheel is more ergonomic. The seat is comfortable and you can still use the trolley handle with it. There's also great protection from the bottom to improve cable and battery security. My only concern with this set is that it doesn't provide the same structural rigidity and protection from side impacts as the original bumper set did. I'm sure that NyloNove has done the maths on that, but all of those parts are rubber and don't clasp the wheel as well as the stock bumpers did. If you do want to invest into those upgrades, you'd need to count in an additional €200 for the kinetic power pads, €300 for the NyloNove foot plates, €215 for both lights, €50 for the tire, and a whopping €380 for the whole bumper and seat set, totaling a astronomical €1,145 expense. That's the price of a Kingsong 14D EUC with some leftover for shred lights and other bling. To bring you back on Earth, the absolute necessity on the Patton are the pads. On second place, I'd put the foot plates. The rest is nice to have, but not a complete necessity. Those are all hidden costs. On a Begode Extreme for €3,200, you wouldn't need to pay extra for pads, a seat, or pedals, as the wheel has an acceptable stock setup by factory. The Veteran Patton lacks a seat in the box. This is an additional cost to get aftermarket, as the position while sitting on the plastic is pretty low. It's doable, but it's not a comfortable seated ride in the long run. As seated riding is becoming the new norm on all performance EUCs, this should be included in the box or on the wheel. The upside of it all is that there's plenty of aftermarket options for the EUC. So if you want to personalize your wheel with a multitude of colors and add-ons, the Patton is customization king. Look, I don't want to bore you to death with features, but I need to at least explain a little bit about them on this wheel. Probably you're wondering if the wheel is safe to ride in wet conditions. Although there is no IP rating, Liebherr wheels have a very good track record with water resistance. The only thing that will likely need to be changed after a couple thousand kilometers are the bearings. The seals or the quality of them are still not yet on the level of motorcycles. The battery is shrink wrapped as well. The wheel is water resistant but not waterproof, so while spraying water on it should be fine, don't jet wash it or purposely ride into deep puddles and water. The screen is something I really appreciate at Veteran. Big, readable and simple to use. You can customize the ride and information on the wheel on the screen, and some features are available also through the app. I wish there would be an option to lock the wheel though. It doesn't have any key or app function to set an alarm and disable the wheel in order to safely leave it outside and not let anyone play with it. The kickstand works like a charm and is very sturdy. The trolley handle has trouble unlocking and locking up with the press of the button. Maybe this got fixed in the newer batches. The height of it is nice and it's very comfortable to push the wheel indoors. The mudguards need some improvements when it comes to city riders. The front of the wheel along with your shoes will be sprayed by water and dirt from the tire. The back of the tire does the same. It is the best mudguard on a suspension Veteran wheel though. It could be easier to pick up the EUC too if there were a motor kill switch. The stock charger, although quick, has some noise to it. I would have recorded the sound of a charger, but it's completely silent now as the fan broke. So put a broken charger to the list of things that broke on the Patton as well. No sound at all. But sound is pretty comparable in loudness with the 100-volt charger for the Veteran Sherman S. So not completely silent, but also not too loud. It isn't lightweight to throw into a backpack. I will keep pushing manufacturers to have a built-in charger. The suspension is plush. You can get the Patton with a 62, 66 and 70 pound spring option depending on your weight and riding style. Mine is the 66 pound option and it's a good middle ground for a 80 kilogram with gear, performance oriented rider. 70 pounds is the way to go for heavier riders and purely off-road and jump-oriented riders that weigh over 70 kilograms. It has adjustable preload, compression and dampening settings. However, it's a linear spring with about 80 millimeters of travel. What that means is that on the softer settings, you'll have a very comfortable ride, but you'll bottom out the suspension on bigger bumps. Even with my 66 pound spring, that happens. While doing off-road, if you crank up the preload and compression, the ride will be slightly less comfortable, but you'll also have less bottoming out. This wheel is very comfortable both on-road and off-road. It's very capable as well. The only thing I wouldn't use it for is big drops, big stair sets and jumps. There's simply not enough travel in the suspension, and on those occasions bottoming out is very possible, which will lessen the lifespan of the shock. I really wish there was the progressive links shock in the Patton, which combines the best of both worlds, and it seems like it's in development right now. Let's talk about safety though. The veteran Patton does not have a smart BMS, and according to the screen it's overcharging the battery pack to 127 volts, which is 4.23 volts per cell. An average of 0.03 volts over the battery cell limit might not seem like much, but if the voltage readout is correct, this might damage or certainly shorten the lifespan of the battery pack. Furthermore, it was possible to fry the motherboard by hard braking at a full charge. Don't believe me? This is exactly what happened to me during a ride in Paris. I had to do an emergency braking maneuver after a full charge, which obliterated the board, leaving the EUC useless until a board replacement arrived. I hope Librachem will limit the charge in the future to 4.185 volts per cell or less. Veteran did come in with a fix after some of those braking issues occurred, and now the wheel beeps immediately if the battery voltage exceeds 126 volts. So the issue of frying a board during a hard brake maneuver on a full charge should not occur anymore. You can even customize the threshold at which voltage it starts beeping. However, you still can't limit the maximum charge voltage on the EUC. A workaround is to manually adjust the charger voltage, but that requires further tinkering, and I'm not sure how the balancing process of the battery pack would happen then. I mentioned that the Patton doesn't have a smart BMS. I had a battery issue with my unit and it needed diagnostics. The screen did tell me that there is no connection to one of the batteries. If one of the cells was damaged, then we wouldn't know which one it is until we could find the cell set by physically measuring sets in the pack. This would be done much easier with better software diagnostics and a smart BMS. The wheel has been sent to repair. After my e-wheel fixed the unit, it turned out that it was a loose BMS connection cable. If you ask me, a smart BMS and an app which checks for the wheel state is a must, especially at this price point. And why was it loose in the first place? There are fuses in the wheel which do add additional safety to the system. I'm not a fan of the GX16-6 ports. They are cold charge ports, the pins are easy to bend, and there's safer ports around. You need to remember to keep the charge flap closed when riding. On the first units like mine, it was hard to access them. In the new batches, it has been improved. There's also software which will prevent you from overpowering the wheel. Both beeps and tilt back will set in according to the parameters set by the rider. You can set alarms and tilt back according to speed and power draw in conjunction with the battery level. You can set the overvoltage alarms as well. Great stuff. There are temperature sensors in the battery which are useful for hot weather riding and fast charging. Motherboard temperature sensors are implemented in order to prevent overheating. Unfortunately, we don't yet have temperature sensors in the motor, which InMotion and Kingsong EUCs do have. The low battery warning works like a charm, and there is a special low battery mode if you really need all of the charge to get back home. I wouldn't turn it on in usual conditions for the longevity of the battery cells though. Moving on from safety, let's talk about the ride for a bit. This wheel feels light to ride on. I think it's not the easiest to learn on, but with enough determination it could be your first wheel. It's both easy to accelerate and to brake when you keep in mind that it's a 39 kg heavy EUC. All things considered, the battery is not big in comparison to the EUC's weight. Veteran achieved a 57 Wh per kilogram ratio on this EUC. In comparison, the Kingsong S22 Pro has 63 Wh per kilogram and the newly released Veteran Lynx 69 Le Mans Wh per kilogram. All things considered, this doesn't tell the full story as motor and controller efficiency plays a big role in range as well. If, however, Veteran would be able to do the same weight reduction tactics on the Patton as they did on the Lynx, a 30 to 35 kg heavy Patton would be amazing. Back to the ride, the wheel does have slight pedal dipping both in acceleration and turns. I'm not a fan of that, but it shouldn't detract too much from your ride enjoyment. The wheel is also wide at 20 centimeters of width. I prefer to ride slimmer wheels. So what do I think about this wheel in the end? This time I wanted to separate some of the experiences looking at casual riders and adventure-oriented riders. For casual riders and small distances, this wheel is too heavy and too expensive. It's difficult to push upstairs due to the smaller 17-inch tire diameter, and it's a challenge to lift a 39 kilogram heavy beast. While the additional power and range is nice, it is not necessary to use this caliber of a wheel for close-by tasks in the city. If you do want to make bigger distances at a time without charging though, then you'll appreciate the power, range, ease of ride and suspension of the veteran Patton. If you're upgrading from an InMotion V11 or a Kingsong S18, you won't be disappointed. This wheel for €3,200 is more of an entrance into the performance EUC rider segment rather than a reasonable transportation choice in most scenarios. Servicing it will be a concern if you plan to use it long term, and looking at the issues I had, I'd estimate a service or maintenance every 5,000 to 10,000 kilometers. For adventure enthusiasts and performance riders, this wheel will leave you longing for a little more, especially in the suspension department. While extremely capable, torquey, and easy to control, 80mm of travel and a linear spring just doesn't cut it for me anymore, especially having ridden on wheels with 130mm of travel. If you have the spare money, I'd go for a Veteran Lynx, which has 90mm of travel, improved suspension, performance, and the same weight. If you have the tools, knowledge, patience, or a service to work on your wheels, then I'd go for a higher maintenance Begode Extreme or Kingsong S22 Pro, which are both cheaper and better equipped from factory. They don't have as much torque, but the suspension travel and performance will make you more capable off-road, even on the hardest trails and jumps. When flying, they don't tilt back in the air, and they don't bottom out as much. They also come with a smart BMS, and I also prefer their riding software. If you're in just for the torque, keep the Patton as your prime choice. In summary, this is the best wheel I don't personally need. It's too heavy to be universally used in errands that might include lifting the wheel or using stairs. It doesn't have the suspension to do jumps, drops, or stair riding action. Once set to comfortable riding, it bottoms out. Once set to performance riding, it's slightly less comfortable and occasionally bottoms out. It is very torquey and has great range, but then again, at the same weight, the Veteran Lynx has even better range, even better performance, even better suspension, and even a smart BMS. What the Patton has going for it is a lesser price than other Veteran wheels and a smaller size, which is a big bonus. Not cheaper than Begode wheels though, in particular the €1,000 cheaper Begode Master, which with its numerous iterations might be a slightly less reliable but still good alternative. The price per watt hour on the Master is 90€ per watt hour compared to the 150€ on the Patton. The Veteran Patton might be the most solid wheel in its category, but with a hefty price tag that comes along with it, and some uncertainties regarding the longevity. In the end, you'll want to make up your mind and do your own decisions, because whatever EUC you take, the adventure will be life-changing. So, if you're still here, leave a like on the video, subscribe to see more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video. See you soon!